Doing that. There we go. Now we're recording. So, hello, Heather.
Hello.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. So, we've just had a quick chat, and I was saying that I've been following your blogs for a good 5 years. I was trying to remember what your first blog was that I read, and I can't remember, but I know it was when you were with BTN Academy.
Do you know, the one that I was talking about this actually the other day, and the one that almost kind of set me on this journey was one that I first did with BTN, and it was called Creating a Monster, I think, and it was all about calling out fitspiration. That was the very, very first blog that I did that went, I would guess, viral, and it was one of the first ones that I did for BTN actually, so it was probably that one.
It was probably that one actually. It certainly rings a bell, and and it's from that really that I've followed you since then, and obviously you've gone on to loads more stuff since then. So further blogs, you've got your own podcast now with the Mindset Mastery, which I love as well. I'd say, although you're up to, are you in the 50s now on that one?
Nearly. I think I recorded 48 yesterday actually, so nearly.
My favourite is still Drains and Radiators.
It's because I can see on the stats, I can see the most popular ones, and that is actually one of the most popular ones. So,
is it?
Yeah.
But of course now you are also a published author.
Oh my God.
As well. So obviously I've been following you for, say, about 5 years. But for anybody that's watching that doesn't know you, who is Heather J Wynn?
Well, gosh. So, it always takes me ages to do this part because I've been in the industry for over 17 years now, which is just, I mean, it's all I've ever done. So I literally left school and went into work as a fitness instructor, and then it just went from there. But previous to BTN, really, I was just the normal. I was PTing, I was fitness instructing, I was doing the normal route, that most coaches tend to go down. Then, obviously, I landed a job as a BTN coach, one of the original coaches, when the team first was built, and that was great. So that put me on an online platform. Before then, I'd never really done it. I'd always been local. I'd kind of had local clients. So that was really, I guess, the first point where I had an audience, I suppose. So yeah. I started to freely admit, as I do in all my blogs, as I do a book, as in I do my podcast, that at the start of my journey with BTN, I went down the route of the normal bog standard coach of beasting people, trying to get people lean, had the reputation of working with females, trying to get them to lose body fat, had numerous mini meltdowns where I guess it was my integrity that was being challenged on a day-to-day basis, and I just can't live with that. It's one of my highest values, integrity. And they were causing me to feel very uncomfortable with what I was doing, feel very uncomfortable with the message that I was putting out to people, in that losing weight will make you happier or a better person.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was still having issues myself. I've suffered from orthorexia, which is the clean eating disorder. I've suffered from very, very low self-confidence, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, all connected to the same things. That was getting worse as I was working in that industry, because I was not only being seen by more people, but there was more pressure put on me to achieve certain results with people.
Yeah.
And it just all it was all a bit of a catalyst, and it all kind of, as I say, led to quite a few mini meltdowns, of which my poor husband must have thought, what the hell? Because I was just in a public view, I was all together and everything was great, and then behind closed doors, I just didn't have a clue what I was going to do, because I knew I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
So at that point there, going back to what we were talking about, I thought, do you know what? I just have to be. I was having help behind the scenes, had a mentor, I had therapy at one point to help with anxiety. And I just thought, do you know what? I want to start to spread my message and to who I am. And thus was born the first blog. And I remember when Ben Coomber, who runs BTN, put that blog out, and he really liked it, because Ben, underneath it all, is very similar.
Yeah.
And he really likes it, and I was absolutely terrified, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get thrown out of the fitness industry for this, and everyone's going to hate me, and everyone's going to be like, oh God, who the hell do you think you are? But it was amazing, the support and the messages. It went on for months and months and months that I got from that. And from then on, I've taken on the journey of turning a complete 180 degrees, really, of going from coaching women in how to lose weight, get fit and lean, to actually being a happier version of themselves, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And my job is really, I say all the time now, my job really has started to gone from convincing people to diet to convincing people not to diet. And it's all about, now I work with women on trying to help them to see that they are enough as they are, without having to lose that extra 5 pounds, without having to fit into a size 10, without having to have that external acceptance. So that really is what I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
That was a long intro.
No, but that's brilliant, and actually it's kind of screwed the itinerary already, because I think that point that you've just made there is so vital, you know, and I know I've said this to you in emails and stuff, and blogs that I've written, you know, you get ladies coming in saying, well, I need to lose this amount of weight, or I need to weigh that amount of weight, or I need to look like this person. And it's always, you know, why? What's behind that? And there's a quote in your book, one of Dalai Lama's quotes that I love, which is, happiness is not something ready-made, it comes from your own actions. And, you know, I think some people could probably take that and think, right, well, it will come from me doing more in the gym, beasting myself, or going on a ridiculous diet, or following this celebrity's way.
Yeah.
But I think you kind of embody that isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
And because one of the things that you talk about in your podcast as well is, obviously you went off, was it to Marbella, yeah. Thinking that would be your kind of epiphany, your change in things, but the way you describe it is you just took everything with you.
Yeah, you take yourself with you.
And I think that's the same on any kind of weight loss diet or health kick. And we'll talk about health in a little bit. But, you know, if you don't deal with the fundamentals, the bases of what's making you unhappy where you are right now, they're still there, whatever you weigh, however far down the line. And that's the message that I get quite a lot from your podcasts and your blogs, and definitely from the book as well. So is that one of your key messages, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Like, as you just said, the journey to we lived in Marbella for just under a year, and I went there with the thought and the belief that it will all be okay then. And I talk about this whimsical place called there that we all have, and we all think, if I could just get there, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
And like you've just said, it can be a weight, it can be a size, it can be, even these days, it can be a certain strength, so they have to lift a certain weight, or it can be a place, it can be a different house, it can be a different car, anything. And we all think that it'll be okay if we could just get there. And then we get there, and yet we're still the same person. We don't change. The things around us can change, external circumstances and the location and everything around us can change, but we are still there. And the quote, I can't remember who said it, but it was just a very simple quote, is wherever you go, you take yourself with you. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
And I got to Spain, and then had this image of, you know, the whole laptop lifestyle. And again, these days, these gurus and mentors come in, and we're all being encouraged to work 4 hours a week. And then on the other hand, we've
from
got
a beach.
Yeah, exactly, from a beach. And then you've got, you know, with your legs in the photo with the coffee and everything. And it's all like, and I thought, that's what I need to do, because I was so stressed at that point. Before I went, I didn't realise what it was that was making me so stressed, whereas obviously I figured out that it's completely against what I believed, but at that point I didn't know. So I thought, I'll just go over there in a different lifestyle, the sun. And don't get me wrong, it was great, we had a blast, and it was exactly what I needed. But the only time it actually started to become great was when I started to do the work on myself. Because before that, I was exactly the same person, and I used to go and get up in the morning and not have a shower and stay in my dressing gown until 12 o'clock in the afternoon, because I'd be emailing on clients, and I was still exactly the same amount as stressed as I was before, because I didn't change. I was still me. So I think with weight loss, it's exactly the same, and we get to a point where, I must just say as well, in my book I talk about my experience and having worked with thousands and thousands of women now over the course of my career, is that I probably can count, maybe not even count, because I don't think really there is any, of the amount of women that actually feel that they can hand on heart say, I am 100% happy with who I am now just because I've got to this weight. There is always a next place.
Yeah.
Always. They get to a certain point, whether it's 7 stone or 7, they get to a certain point, and then there's always, well, if I could just now tone up my thighs, or what about if I could just see my abs, or if I could just lift this way, or if I could just, it's like, those words, if I could just, they haunt me, because I've heard them so many times.
Yeah.
And it's very, I think until you start to do the work on yourself and actually start to admit that to yourself, it's very, very difficult, because you put all of your eggs in that basket. And women do genuinely, teeth back in, genuinely believe that that's all they need to do in order to be happy.
Yeah.
And it's only when they get there that they realise, it's as good as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it can be something completely external in a way that makes you realise. I know for me, when fairly early on in my kind of coaching career, I had this impression that I had to look the fittest, be the fittest, have the right body to be able to do my job. And so I went, swapped an obsession with the scales for one with body fat calipers. And, it got down and in my eyes looked the best I've ever looked. But it meant even on holiday, I had to stick to boiled eggs and broccoli at set times of the day. And the boys are having ice cream. And, they said to, this is in one of my books, they said to me, what's wrong with ice cream, Mummy? Why can we have it and you can't have it? And you start and think, what kind of message am I giving them? And still, even now, you have slip-ups and you really question yourself and all the rest of it. But I think that's why we need sort of coaches in the industry like you, and I think we all need some kind of mentor to just kind of pull us up every now and then and say, just look at what you're doing. And sorry, go on, Heather.
No, I was just saying that's absolutely right as well, and so many of the conversations that I've had with women is where, in fact, I had one the other day, and she was talking about the reasons that she wanted to lose weight and get to this specific goal, and the words that came out of her mouth were, well, when I get there, I'll be able to eat whatever I want. And exactly what you've just said is that the absolute opposite tends to happen. Yeah. Is that then it doesn't become about getting there for a while, because obviously you have that initial kind of high of being there. For that interim before you then start to go for the next goal, it gets replaced by a fear of losing it. Yeah. And you have this innocent kind of fear of, oh my gosh, if I just eat one chip, that's it, I'm going to go back. And again, I've seen that a lot, and that is when the beliefs that their lifestyle is going to be better, the beliefs that they're going to be able to go out and have fun and relax in their own body doesn't happen, because exactly what you've just said, I've experienced it, and most women probably have, where they get to the point where they should, in their previous views, been happy, strutting along the beach, having an ice cream here and there, not worrying about it. Actually, the opposite happens, because it gets replaced with this absolute gut-wrenching fear that you're going to lose it again.
And it becomes almost like a paranoia in a way, doesn't it? And there's there's a quote early on in your book that I loved, and I've marked loads of pages in the book, but it says, to see change in someone's life to the point where food is no longer used as the only source of pleasure takes time and effort, and cannot be done via a well-scripted nutrition plan and a few motivational emails. And I think that's it. I know sort of, I get ladies coming to me and they think, right, if you give me this exercise plan and you tell me what to eat, or you just give me my macros, that will do the job. And I kind of try and coach them through and almost refuse to give them those ceilings, because I just think it's making us eat by numbers. I remember as a kid doing colour by numbers, and now that's become eating by numbers. And again, psychologically, I think that's damaging, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the health aspects, but it also comes on nicely to another point that you make about smoke and mirrors in the fitness industry. And so what do you mean by that term?
When I talk about smoke and mirrors, it's basically this view from, I would say, I mean, I always used to say from the general public, but now I think that actually it's coaches as well within themselves, and this belief that everything that the fitness industry puts out there, these fad diets, the fitspiration, and all of these things encouraging people to be stronger, leaner, fitter, slimmer, is actually all it takes, and that's all it takes for you or for everyone to live a happier life. Whereas underneath it all, it's like, God, it's just like internal combustion. It is completely falsified. And even if you speak to a lot of these coaches who put these things out, they are, I won't say messed up, because there are some, and there's so many. The lack of confidence is absolutely rife in the coaching industry from coaches themselves. And what annoys me is that these people are the ones that are out there portraying that all you have to do is get fitter or get slimmer, follow my plan, and you can have my life like me. And they've got all these smiley pictures, and it's basically almost akin to saying, if you eat like me, you can be me, and they have these perfect, obviously filtered photos on Instagram, and it gives people the impression that eating and dieting and being slim is the equivalent of having a perfect life. Whereas actually, and again, so often it can mean the complete opposite, because there are so many insecurities. And smoke and mirrors, basically, it goes off in so many different paths. It's got the inspiration really is the fitspiration really is the key point. Is that it's not all as it seems on the surface, and as you start to delve underneath, it can be quite disturbing. Some of the practices that go on in the fitness industry, some of the things that the coaches are doing with the clients, just to be able to have this almost like a before and after picture with the client, because they're seen as that's all that matters, that's all that counts. And unfortunately, I think, as I say, it's not really just the public that are buying into it, it's the coaches themselves as well, and that's why they're then pushing it onto their clients as well, which is just a massive problem. And it's just something that I really, really want to see change, that you can't coach people if you are harbouring these problems and insecurities yourself. And I know I did that for a certain point, and a lot of people are doing that to a certain point, but you have to be able to at some point admit that actually, no, I'm not 100% comfortable. Go off and do the work within yourself, and then come back and start the coaching again, because all I can see is that people are just passing it on and on and on, and it's expanding and expanding and expanding. And these insecurities, people come into the fitness industry thinking it's going to make them confident, thinking it's going to give them a boost, thinking they're going to come out of it feeling great. And actually, so many of them leave by a back door completely busted open, no self-confidence, being completely almost just wiped out by this pressure that the coaches are putting on them. So, the smoke and mirrors is something that I've done quite a few blogs originally on it, because it was something that I wanted people to just be a little bit wiser and wise up to the fact that all is not as it seems, especially on social media like Facebook, Instagram, these inspirational pictures and these people that people look up to. It's not all as it seems. There's a ridiculous use of drugs in the fitness industry and with coaches as well, or supplements, abuse of supplements that then get portrayed as just hard work and just dieting. There's so many avenues to smoke and mirrors, but it is basically about helping people to wise up to actually and open their eyes to what they're looking at, and to not buy into something that if you think, well, that doesn't quite seem to be 100% real, if your gut tells you that there's something not quite right about it, then 9 times out of 10, and that's.
And I think that's it, isn't it? Because quite often the marketing is so clever that what they sell you is exactly what you think you need. They're kind of really preying on your insecurities, and they give you this fixed time period that they think makes you think everything will be fixed in that amount of time. But like you say, if it seems too good to be true, maybe you've been trying for it can be decades for some people that they've been hopping on and off the diet bus. Is it the right thing to hop back on, or is it actually time to kind of reassess everything? And I think, like you say, the smoke and mirrors with social media is very much with the fitness industry and coaches, but it is becoming more to individuals in terms of what they post. Kind of. I know people that have come off things like Instagram and Facebook because they're sick of seeing other people's meals on there, which is fair enough. But what you then don't see is that they're kind of literally spooning out a peanut butter jar or something after that to make up for the fact that actually they feel wretched and tired and hungry. Maybe their hair's falling out. All these sorts of things. So the smoke and mirrors kind of ties in nicely, which are part of the book again that I love, that you talk about your true self versus your false self.
Yeah.
And I'm one of these people that I'm on Facebook to help kind of promote my message and kind of akin to what you're saying, and to kind of put those things out there. But it can be an incredibly negative environment, simply because so many people are posting their false selves because they're worried their true self isn't good enough. So where did your kind of whole concept of true self versus false self come in?
Well, I guess again, this is all, so much of this has been, when I was writing my book, it almost became a little bit of a concluding chapter to the past 7 years, I would say. So kind of just before pre-BTN, when I started to go down the route of becoming a little bit too obsessed with things. It's just it was naturally as the industry evolved, because when I talk about when I first became a PT, it feels like I'm so old, because there was no Facebook, there was no, we were still texting, we were still putting flyers through people's mailboxes, and the only people that had personal trainers were people who were either athletes or the rich, and the people who could afford it and see that it was very much a luxury for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so the transition for the industry has just been enormous, and it's just changed so much. And about the rise of social media was, I can look back and now realise that was the time that I started to go down this little bit too obsessive route. But the true self really became apparent to me when I started to go to, I wrote about this in the book, probably, when I started to go to things like Body Power, all these fitness expos and things like that. Or when I used to go and have meetings with people in the industry, and I'd be in an environment around a lot of people from the industry, and I used to come back, even having just spent a day there, and I used to come back and feel like I had a hangover, like really, almost as if I'd been on a 2-day binge, and the hangover that I used to get, when I was 14 and I was going out, it was really bad. I was thinking, oh my God, what's going on? And then I started to figure out that when I was going to these events, I was putting on this, almost like a bit of an act, that I wasn't letting who I was come out, and I was having conversations where I would almost alter my opinion to try and fit in with what I thought they'd want to hear, and I could tell that other people were doing the same thing. It was all very stilted, when you have a conversation with people, and it's a bit like, hello, how are you today? And it's like they're kind of thinking about it in the background, thinking, right, what does this person want to hear from me? That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
I was doing as well. I bought into it as well, as again so many people do. Having had conversations with other coaches around this, I know that other people do as well, because other people have said, do you know what, that's exactly what I feel.
Yeah.
And I guess it was that really stemmed that. And then obviously I was doing a lot of work, as I would say, with a mentor who helped me really so much. I don't think I would be here without her. And she was kind of challenging me on that and saying, well, what is it that you are presenting in these situations that isn't you? And it was really hard to have to say, well, actually, God, if I went in there and was just me, I feel like that I just wouldn't be accepted, and that people would think, well, who the hell are you? What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here, da-da-da-da-da. And it's really hard to actually have to face up to that.
Yeah.
So that was really where that true self and the mask, taking the mask off, stemmed from. And I see that all the time on social media as well. Is that sometimes I read things and I just think, it's just complex, it really is. You're just talking, that isn't you, just be real. And these days it almost seems that people are saying it to try and be real, whereas still they're not actually saying what they really feel. They're still kind of following the trends, and you can tell with people that at one point they have this opinion, and then when they're talking to someone else, you listen to them and they have a different opinion, and then they're talking to someone else and they're saying what they want to hear. And it's rife in the industry because there's such a deep-rooted insecurity with so many people that are in it, that then I kind of talked about the body power hall is like almost like a masquerade ball where everyone's walking around with these different masks on
and holding everything in and and
exactly, and saying exactly what they think they need to say to be acceptable, and prepping themselves and dieting and going on these ridiculous dehydration things just to walk around an expedition. I mean, what? It's just crazy to me now. But having bought into that, to be honest, I only did it once or twice before I just thought, no, I can't. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
But it's crazy the how the industry is supposed to be all about helping you build confidence, and when you go to somewhere like that, you just think, gosh, the insecurity is just rife.
Yeah, and I think that ties in nicely with, I call myself a female health coach nowadays, and the health aspect is a key part of that kind of, and I think women have a really interesting journey through their life that can be quite difficult with all the kind of pregnancy, postnatal, perimenopause, those sorts of things. But the health aspect, so it's not about kind of diet and fitness. And I like it in your book that you actually go through the definition of health and how we're mutating that word to fit what we think it should be. So, when coaches like yourself and myself are talking about health, we're not just talking about how physically fit you are, what your weight is. We're talking about your emotional health, your psychological health as well. So dealing with those insecurities, but also another thing that I've blogged about quite a bit is pleasure, because I think in chasing what we think is health, meaning being fitter and thinner, we see that as beasting ourselves, restricting ourselves. Okay, and so in terms of a health pyramid, we're totally blowing out the emotional health and particularly that psychological health side of things as well. And you've got a big chapter in your book that kind of really goes into what health really is. And kind of I really like the way that you kind of separate that out from what we're making that term mean nowadays.
Yeah.
So
it's totally and utterly right. And I remember when I did when I talked at the BTN conference. Were you there? Did you go to that?
I didn't know.
And I did. This was a massive part of my talk at that point as well, and I should have mentioned that with the first blog when I talked at the BTN conference. Again, that was a very much a prominent moment for me. Everyone else was talking about nutrient timing and carbs, and I was saying, no, you were all full of crap. Let's just talk about happiness. And but I talked a huge part about that, and it was the way that you worded it then was brilliant. And we are morphing the word health into what we think or want it to fit at that moment in time, and it changes through the times as well. Like with different fads, we think about health being first of all cutting out carbs or cutting out sugar. Before that, it was cutting out fat. Health kind of morphs depending on where we are at this moment in time. But it's health is defined by the World Health Organization as complete well-being in not just physical but emotional, social health, and you've got to have all of those. I call it like a pie chart.
Yeah.
So we've got to have each piece of the pie is equal to each other piece of the pie.
And this pie fits your macros, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah, totally, yeah. So when you talk about health and other coaches, they'll look at this pie as if to say, right, well, we have to have protein, carbs, and fat. But really, the physical part of it is only ever going to be a certain slice. And as soon as you start to overcompensate for the physical and start to go overboard, something else is going to lose. They always have to add up to 100%, as with anything we know as a pie chart. But as soon as the health starts to go a little bit too overboard, something else is going to lose. And it's like there's a task that I do quite often. It's called the Wheel of Life. You've probably heard of it.
Yes, I have, yeah.
And similar to that, where you have to look at all the areas of your life, and once some things start to take over a little bit more, other things start to lose. And it's exactly the same thing with health. And it's ironic to me so often that I see people when they start to say, well, I really want to get healthy and I'm really going to go out and get healthy, and they just go so far the opposite way down the path. They beat themselves in the gym. They put more pressure on themselves. They stress themselves out. They start to dread social situations because of the reasons that we've talked about. They start to cut themselves off from their friends and family. They start to cut themselves off from doing the things that they enjoy, whether that be, just going out for walks because they think, oh, I have to go in the gym, or they don't go out for meals because they think, oh, I can't eat what I want. And you think, well, all of those things add up to the psychological health that makes up a part of that pie chart. So you think, well, you're going to end up with the whole of the pie chart just being about physical health, which I genuinely think some people believe that's what it is.
Yeah.
But it's completely not, and you can see that. I mean, it's, as we know, in industry, stress is responsible for so many of the diseases long term, and it's responsible for so much of all. I believe stress is just one of the biggest killers, not directly, but as a secondary, I really believe that it is.
Yeah.
And when you look at the stress that people put upon themselves to get healthy, it's so ironic.
It is, yeah.
But it's, and when I did that talk, there were so many people that said that really resonated with them as well, because when you go to any of these health expeditions, it's like when you go to things like Leisure Industry Week, which I think is on at this moment in time, and you go there and you just think every single thing is all about physical health. It's all about being slimmer, eating better, which, yeah, it's great, but as we've talked about, it's only one part of that puzzle. And if you forget about the other two, or the other three or four, really, when you think about it, you are never going to get to that fundamental place of health, even though it's completely subjective. You're going to find it very, very difficult to ever feel completely at ease with yourself without those other things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the thing is as well, we often overlook that probably the most powerful muscle in our body is our brain. And so if we're not dealing with our mindset, and whether that's through kind of approaches in our lifestyle, managing our stress, or even, somebody who wants to achieve something physically, and it doesn't have to be a gym thing, it can be, I've had a couple of ladies climbing Ben Nevis, those sorts of things. If you don't believe in your head that you can do it, if you're telling yourself you can't, then you can't. And and that's, I use Headspace myself. I found that brilliant and encourage clients to either use that or an app that suits them, because I know my husband can't stand his voice, but for me it's brilliant. So it's, each to their own. But that's where your podcasts come in as well, the Mindset Mastery. It's starting to entice people to actually look at this side of things, and look at their strategy to even fitness, that you are allowed to plan in rest, you are allowed to plan in, even if you call it active recovery, it's not about hitting it harder all of the time.
Yeah, definitely. There is so much guilt surrounded by that, and it again seems to be, especially women, I don't know, there must be something in it, but it's become very apparent to me how women feel guilty about pretty much everything we do, and especially when it comes down to self-care or loving yourself, which people, even when I say that word, so many people they cringe and they go, ooh, don't talk to me about that. But I just think that if you are, so many women have so many things in their life that they're trying to balance and juggle. You're doing all of that, you're doing family, friends, jobs, you're doing it a disservice if you don't put yourself first, because you have to, I always say, to have a frazzled you full time you're gonna end up losing out, rather than saying to yourself, okay, I'm just gonna take some step back, putting some effort into having 100% on form you for half the time. It's way better in the long run for everyone around you, not just you as well. And this guilt that we feel around taking days off, around even having, like you say, active rest, going out for a walk. Oh my God, but I should be in the gym. And you just think, God, get yourself out there and go out and do whatever. Again, it always comes down to what makes you happy.
Yeah.
If going in the gym really, really gives you that absolute, oh my God, I can't wait, I absolutely love it, it makes me feel great, not just because of the results that you think you're getting from it, but because of the intrinsic motivation is there, because you actually love the act of going in the gym, great, fine, crack on and do it. But there are so many people that have turned their back on activities that they really enjoy because they've been told by some that they have to do different training.
Yeah.
And it's all about weights at the moment as well for women. And yeah, it's great. The industry always seems to take things too far. And when the strong beats skinny and all that, which I don't like because nothing beats anything. It's just each to their own. But that was great, and I think women should feel more acceptable in the weights room, and that's happened now. But it seems to have now gone overboard, where it's, if you're not in the weight room, then what are you doing? You're wasting your time, and get off that treadmill, and well, God, Zumba, oh, that's for wimps, and it's like, for God's sake, can we just not? Like, it's great now women can feel comfortable in the weight room, but let them feel comfortable in Zumba class, and let them feel comfortable walking up a mountain, let them feel comfortable on a stationary bike if that's what they want to do.
As I say, it's not stealing the pleasure out of it again, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
Exactly.
And I'm pleased you said about self-care in there, because I literally get people rolling their eyes thinking it means, kind of lighting candles, laying in a darkened room and listening to whale music type thing. Whereas, one of the phrases that I love and I use, and it's Lady Dr. Sarah Gottfried that did it, and it's tiara time. And that can be, I always like in the film Sex and the City 2, where Charlotte kind of locks herself in the kitchen cupboard to have a cry. But with me for tiara time, it's our bedroom is my space, and literally I say to the boys, unless the house is on fire, you're not coming in. And it's 15 minutes, but sometimes you just need that little bit of space, and the only rules for self-care is that whatever you're doing in that time is completely for you. And I think it's just being able to convey that. So it can be dancing, it can be doing Zumba, it can be whatever makes you happy, whatever gives you pleasure, but gives you pleasure for the intrinsic factor, rather than thinking you're doing it to please someone else, or more commonly now, to get a picture to post on social media.
No, yeah. I saw an article actually a couple of days ago, and it showed I think it was a concert, and all along the front row, people were watching the concert through their phones. So obviously they were filming it on their phones, and then there was this one lady who was obviously older than the rest of them, and she was just stood there, and she had her arms on the railings like this, and she was looking, and she was taking in that moment, she was enjoying it, whereas all the other people around her were obsessed about capturing it so they could put it on later, and I just think, God, that's such that there to me was such a prime pinnacle point of looking at it, thinking that's what our generation is about now. It's all about capturing the moment, not for us, not taking it in intrinsically and savoring, but trying to capture it then to show someone else, or thinking that if we don't capture it, we'll lose out and we'll want to watch it later, when we never do. It's like when we take videos of firework displays. How many times do you ever watch it?
Yeah. But I think the scary thing is we're passing this on to our children. We've recently come back from a holiday, and in the resort there was fabulous pools with great slides down into the water. But there was this one dad that he was actually shouting at the child at the end because he wanted a picture, and then was posting it on social media. So the poor child, rather than having fun and enjoying, and in a way, this is the way we're starting to live our lives. We're living it for how we present it behind the mask.
Yeah.
We're losing our true self, but in doing that, we're completely losing the pleasure along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Based on someone else's standards.
Yeah, and so many the things that, going back to self-care, so many of the things that we would have done that would have come under the heading of self-care, is being taken away from that. So when we go out for a meal with our partner, if we go out for a meal with husbands or wives or partners, and that's something where you can really let go, you can let yourself be yourself, that really can be an essence of self-care, because it's doing something for you, you're with the person that you love. But even these days, it's all you can see them, and both of them are scrolling through their phone, and like they're both taking pictures and putting it on, and then looking back, has anyone liked it? Why has no one liked it? Da, 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 da. And you just think, gosh, even when you do see people doing the acts of that, they then say, well, I do go and relax, I go and do this. Like, well, you're still not present in the moment, and that is such a big part of it. And talking about brain health, is that we know now that being mindful and being present in the moment and having that downtime for your brain and your mind is so important for brain health, so important. And I just don't feel that we get that unless we actually now we have to go after it, and we have to say, right, I am going to switch off and almost put this little mental shutters down on yourself, and go and do something without your phone, without anything that's going to distract you, and just say, right, I have to get this time for my own sanity, really. And it's only really once you start to do it that you realise how much benefit it gives you and how good it feels. Trying to get people to start it is the hard part.
I was going to say, it's getting them to accept that it is scary to start with, because you almost feel detached or excluded. But the benefits that come with it outweigh that initial little feeling. And I think the thing is, from the discussion that we've had, and I could talk to you about this all day, to be honest with you, is, you know, we've kind of hit a lot of myths in the fitness industry, really. And both you and I are coaches. So, and I think I have my own coach. I know you've already described that you've got your coach. So why should people have a coach, and what kind of things should they look out for when they're choosing one?
Well, I think the problem that I've seen with most people when they choose a coach is that originally they choose a coach for the wrong reasons, because it's almost like people should have a coach to coach them to find a coach, if that makes sense, because they go into the search for a coach with the belief that they need someone that's going to help them to lose weight, or they need someone that's going to help them to lift a certain weight, or going back to all those extrinsic reasons to begin with. And they search for a coach with that in mind. So they look for the people who are shouting about the 8-week transformations, the ones that are talking about, I can help you lose this much in this amount of days. And they end up with the complete opposite. And so again, it's almost like you need to have almost embarked a little bit onto this work before you then commit to a coach, I believe. Which is where kind of self-learning can come in, which is where reading books, reading blogs and things, all it needs is a little bit of an initial spark, or even listening to this video for someone, it might then make them think, do you know what, actually me looking for that kind of coach, I'm not quite sure whether it's what I need, maybe I'm going to look at a different area of coaching. But I think once you actually do get to that point, first of all, you have to get someone that you gel with without a shadow of a doubt. And not everyone's right for everyone as a coach-client relationship. There will be some people that you feel there's a bit of a disconnect with. There's nothing better than gut feels, I really, really believe. And I trust my intuition 100%, and my gut feels. I always, whenever I've gone against it, I've regretted it. And I always think that it's for females. And again, going back to what we were just talking about, though, that mindfulness, that quiet time, gives you a chance to actually reconnect with your gut and your intuition as well. We tend to live on surface level, so I would say people live from here up, and they live kind of from head upwards, whereas when we go into that or get that habit of being quiet, still in our mind, which again sounds a bit rude, but it's not. It actually enables us to actually start to become a little bit reconnected with who we are and with our intuition, and it helps us to make better decisions.
And it's reconnecting with your values as well, because obviously the final chapter is kind of really thinking about your values, and then, or your principles, however you want to phrase it, but then living your life according to those.
Absolutely, and it's quite scary how so many people don't even know what it means to have values, what their values are. And again, there's some studies that have been done where is the route to happiness, no one can ever say this is the actual path to happiness. But one of the ways that you can actually start to take yourself down that path is to figure out what your 5 core values are, and then to try and find evidence of them in your life. If you can't find evidence of your 5 core values in your life, then you are going to be very, very hard pushed to find yourself at a place of peace and happiness. Because they define who you are at the core of you and your gut. And if you can't find evidence of that, then of course you're not ever gonna get that feeling of being, I'm good, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be always like a little bit of a disconnect. That's how I was when I was feeling that disconnect of integrity. As I said, because integrity was so high up on my list, anything that challenged that, I was never going to be happy with, ever.
Yeah.
So to do and that's why I put the exercise in the book, to help people actually figure out what their values are. And then it takes the task further to help people to say, okay, can I see evidence of these values? If not, how can I change that? And that's one of the first things that I think people need to do.
Yeah.
But finding a coach that is open to that way of coaching is definitely, you need to find a coach that is on your wavelength, as in personality and who you click with, but open to the kind of things that you're talking about and you're saying as well. You don't want a coach who's going to try and convince you to do something that you know that you actually don't really want to do.
Yeah.
And the problem with coaches these days is that you just, unfortunately, you never know what you're going to get until you actually start working with them, because you just don't. There's no real regulations, as you know, with the industry. Anyone can kind of come in and be a well-being coach, or, and half the time that they've not done any qualifications, or they've done a half-day, supplement selling course or something, and it's
fine. And I think people don't even realise there's no real regulation over the qualifications themselves.
No, exactly. There really isn't. So it's such an important and integral industry. As I say, it's responsible for people's health, but anyone can do it. It's ridiculous. So you have to, as a client, going into finding someone to coach you have to really have your wits about you. Do your homework without a shadow of a doubt. Do your research. If possible, I always ask or suggest to people to find if they can speak to one of their coach's ex-clients or current clients.
Yeah.
And just say, is it okay? Would there be anyone that you coach or have coached that would be able to just have a 5-minute chat with me? That's all it is. And then ask them the questions. How were they? Could you contact them easily? What was their attitude like with you? If things went wrong, how did they treat you? You don't want a coach that is only going to be on board with you if you go their way. You need someone that's going to be able to work with what you need as an individual. And that is probably the most important aspect, is that coaching is individual. It shouldn't be a kind of a teacher of do this, do that, do that, do that, do this. That isn't what a coach is. A coach is about coaching you in the ways that you need it, no matter what that is.
That's
and
it.
For them to be open to that, to doing things your way, really.
And I think it's finding your way as well, isn't it? So, and all too often, if, some coaches quite often blame their clients. So if they haven't hit their goals or weight or whatever it is, well, clearly they're not doing enough.
Yeah.
And actually you want somebody that's going to work with you to find, why things aren't happening the way you want, why things are, maybe you're finding them hard, or again, you're not enjoying them. And you need that two-way process, don't you?
Definitely. And also, one of the most important aspects of being a coach, I think, as you'll agree with, is figuring out whether that client is actually ready for what they say they want as well. And so many times I've had to have the conversation of actually having to get people to reevaluate their goals because they're not actually ready when it comes down to it. And that isn't saying that they're in the wrong or there's a blame or anything. It's just the basic fact that they're just not ready for what it's going to take for them to get where they want to go. And that can be with mindset as well, rather than with weight or fitness. There's quite a few people that have embarked on a journey with me as a coach, and they've really, really struggled with it because they're just not ready to go down that route. They're just not ready to open themselves up to some of the things that would need to be opened up. They're not ready to have that conversation with themselves. And that isn't to say that they're wrong or that they're bad or they've failed. It's just a timing issue.
Yeah.
And for a coach to be able to say openly and honestly, I think this probably isn't the right thing for you right now. Let's look at what we can do, even if that means referring them out, even if that means losing them as a client. I think that shows real skill as a coach to be able to do that. And if as a client you feel that you are not getting that service, sometimes you as a client will know, I'm not really buying into this because I don't really feel that there's something missing and I'm not quite sure. And once you've figured out that it's not anything to do with with any of the methods or anything like that. It's actually to do with the fact that you're just not really on board. If your coach continues to try and force you and push you, then I would say that's probably one of the biggest warning signs, because they're not actually looking at you as a person, as an individual, and assessing whether or not you are actually ready to do this. Readiness to change which is why I put a chapter in the book as well, because it's so important, because it can make people feel like a great big whopping failure, when actually it's nothing to do with them not being able to do it. It's just the fact that they're not ready.
That's it, and it's always interesting, I think, because if you do a sort of a reputable PT qualification, Francesca and De Clemente's change model is a key part of what you go through. And at the time when you suddenly think, oh, I don't see what this has got to do with training people and that, but it's everything to do with it. And so you as a coach, you've got to set aside what you want the people to achieve, and focus on what they want, what they really want. And I know for me at this point, I turn into my children. It's like, well, why? But so you need somebody that you can work with on that sort of basis, don't you?
Yeah, you need someone that's going to just, as I say, going back to the individual, working with you as a person, not someone that's just going to send you out a bulk pamphlet that that they've given to the 4 or 5 clients before them, and it's all very generic. You don't want someone that's going to work with generic cookie cutter plans or anything like that. And you'll know, I think you know when you're getting that. Even an inexperienced client, I think they'll kind of, again, gut instinct will be, this isn't really tailored to me. But it depends on what you're looking for as from coaching as well, because it'll be completely different if you're going into a gym and training with a coach in that environment to training with someone doing mindset online, for example. It can be completely different. Just, I would say, the one thing that I would say is do your homework. Do your homework on who it is that you're actually looking for, and don't just go off what they're posting on social media, because they are meticulously planning that behind the scenes. Everything that goes on social media from that coach will be what they want you to see, which is why if you can speak to a client, or if you can have a look at some of the work that they're doing that they aren't posting, if they're in a gym, watch them, go in and watch them with their clients, go and just observe a little bit, and do an investigation work, that's all I'd say.
And I think that's the same for your health as well, isn't it? Nobody has the magic answer for you. You've got to kind of really be your own health detective and understand what's right for you.
Definitely.
So, brilliant, thank you. So we've talked about the book a little bit. So there it is. It's called...
All your stickers in it.
All the stickers in it.
That's great.
I'm working my way through in part 3. You've got the exercises to support you on your journey, and like you say, they're actually hard. Not least because, I think it's very easy for us to kind of almost want to blame other people for the way we do things and the way we are. And this actually makes you look at the real you and your drivers behind things. So to say there are a few people that are getting a copy of this from me, because I think it's brilliant, and I'll be reading it again. So it's available on Amazon now, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So brilliant. And obviously look out for Heather's blogs on your Heather J Wynn sites. All of them you can whiz through, and then you do them at the end of every podcast.
Yes, I do. So so my blogs, I've got 2 sites. So the most recent ones are on heatherjwynn.com. For my old ones, there's a link on that website that takes you to my archives as well in there. Instagram I'm on as HJ Coaching. No food pictures, I promise. Just all real stuff. And then Facebook group is Heather J Wynn. And if you go onto my Facebook group, you will also see a link to, I have a private group called Enough Already, which is obviously the title of the book. And that is for people, I was going to say women, but I've had a few requests from men lately, and I've let them in, and so far no trouble has ensued, so we'll let them in. But just for people wanting to a little bit more secure place, who maybe want to have discussions that they don't want other people to obviously then see that they've posted. So feel free to click to join that, and I will let you in. But other than that, join the discussion on my Facebook page, which is Heather J Wynn.
And I thoroughly recommend as well your Mindset Mastery podcasts.
Yes,
as
the
well.
Mindset Mastery podcast, yeah.
They're really, really short, which is what I love. So, you know, I can pop one on the school run and listen to it. So, you know, you're not having to put huge amounts of time, but there are some little gems in those as well. So that's well worth tuning into.
Good, thank you. And I will also just do a little plug. If you do listen to the Mindset Mastery podcast, then a review would be very much appreciated, because their iTunes go wild for reviews, and I'm just trying to expand my reach a little bit on the podcast, because they are different, 15 minutes, and I've had some real great feedback from them as well, but I need more people to listen, so little plug for a little review there.
There you go. So I thoroughly recommend them. I think they're great.
Thank you.
So brilliant. But thank you so much for your time, Heather. I say I could talk to you all day. Thoroughly recommend the book, and good luck with that as well.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for all of your support as well. You've been great.
Oh, brilliant. Magic. Look forward to reading more, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.